Hi, everyone. I think we'll get started. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, excellent. Well, welcome to the what will be your 37th AI presentation of the festival. I hope we can tell you some new things you might not have heard. You may have heard a lot of this stuff elsewhere. I think a lot of publishers are experimenting with the same sorts of things, grappling with the same issues. We thought it'd be useful to walk you through some of the things that we're doing at the FT. We've been working on AI for the last couple of years now, but I'll first tell you a little bit about me. I'm a long-time FT reporter, editor. I've been there a quarter of a century, which fills me with dread when I look at that number on the screen. I started off as a reporter in London. I was our Los Angeles correspondent for 8 years and was there for the birth of sort of social media, Netflix, Facebook. I moved to New York as global media editor and covered the kind of grappling of the transition from legacy print and print media to the new digital publishing models that we saw. The FT itself pioneered digital subscription, which most of you I'm sure are aware of. I then came back and had 4 years as news editor and was sort of running the FT newsroom in the thick of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the UK political crisis when we had 3 prime ministers in 8 weeks. And since, I think, middle of 2023, I've been running digital platforms, which includes leading all of our editorial AI efforts. So as I started this job, my boss, Rula Khalaf, wrote a letter to readers, which I think was among the first editors to kind of lay out a set of principles for how we were going to use AI, how we were going to test it, a sort of a code of conduct and an attempt to be transparent because ChatGPT was taking off. There's an expectation that we and other news organizations would be using it. We wanted to be clear to readers that we were going to be trying and testing these new models and working them out. And she made a commitment to say that our journalism would continue to be written by humans. We haven't gone down the road of replacing journalists with robots. But we wanted to stress that we wanted the newsroom to remain a hub for innovation, that we were going to test as many things as we could to try and find ways of enhancing our journalism and to find ways of telling different types of stories that hitherto would have been unavailable to us. And that got a lot of pickup. I think she's going to update it soon. There'll be another letter to readers in coming weeks to sort of bring them up to speed with some of the things that we've done, some of the things I'm going to tell you about today. So since that letter, we've had lots of newsroom tests and experiments. We created something called the Newsroom AI panel, which was made up of senior editors and our in-house lawyer, Nigel Hansen. I sit on it as well. We get a lot of requests from journalists who want to use AI in their stories, whether they want to use an AI-generated image to illustrate a story. We've been pretty rigorous about not letting a lot of AI-generated imagery appear on the FT, unless it's actually for the illustrative purposes of the story itself. So there was a case where a company was producing very convincing sort of rip-off Disney movie posters about films that didn't exist and hadn't been produced by Disney, and we used one of those to illustrate the story. But we kept a lid on a lot of other AI-generated imagery because we're concerned about copyright protection, and we have to operate quite strictly within those parameters. So we meet regularly to consider submissions for use of AI. And we also approve projects that are developed in-house by a team called the Accelerate AI team, which is started off slowly but has really picked up speed. It's a cross-departmental group made up of colleagues from editorial and from product and tech. We've got a really good working relationship, and we've developed quite a few things at pace. When things don't work, we can move on. And we're in the midst of some new things which we're going to be rolling out soon. So the panel, just to go through how the panel works, as I said, journalists and reporters, editors can submit applications. So the audience engagement team wanted to try a new audience analytics tool. We would look at that and approve it. We meet regularly, and then everything we do use is logged in a registry, which is maintained by the data and AI governance team. So we take this stuff and the transparency really, really seriously, so people internally can see it and externally can as well. We also wrote a set of an AI code of conduct, which is a sort of an addendum to our editorial code of conduct, which all reporters are signatories to. And we weigh that up when considering what we're going to use and what we're going to okay or authorize for use. So far this team has produced a couple of things. Alt text for visually impaired readers, which was the text behind images that you see when you scroll over with your mouse. We were using AI to generate a short piece of text on what the image was for those for people who are using audio readers and who want to hear what the image looks like. On the other side of the FT, we developed a tool called Ask FT, which some of you may or may not have seen, which is a Gen AI search tool, which I started off making some mistakes. We realized that it was hallucinating and taking inputs from the training model. So Martin Starb's in the room. I think he found this one, my colleague Martin. But the FT had never, as far as we knew, had ever published a recipe for, I think, crab fettuccine. And this tool generated a very nice recipe for crab fettuccine, which we think came from within the training model. So issues like that were ironed out over time, and it's now in pretty good shape. And it's being rolled out to all FT Pro users. These are business clients and people have business licenses to use the FT. So you can, much like ChatGPT, you can write a question. It will search the FT archive, pull an answer back, and give you context and links and all of that. I think more significantly for us in editorial is we developed something called the AI Playground, which is a shared collaborative workspace. Everyone has access to it, and reporters and editors can go in there and play around with prompts in a sort of safe space, genuinely a safe space, because we can put our content in there. We know it's not going to leak anywhere. We can manipulate FT content. We can summarize it. We can shorten it. And it's been a good place to practice prompt engineering, or we like to call it prompt editing, because I think journalists are really well placed to write good prompts if you think that clarity and brevity of language is important in writing news reports or writing longer pieces. It's also important in writing a clear prompt that you want a model to understand. So it's been a good place to do that and to try that. We've used an AI tool called Utopia to help clean up our comments. So I don't know how many of you work at publications that have below-the-line comments. We really like our commenters, most of them, who like to contribute positively to stories and have debates with our journalists and debates with other commenters. I guess in common with other publishers, we do get a lot of pretty gnarly stuff which we have to take out. So if people are being offensive or racist or causing problems, those are often removed by our comment moderation team. Because we publish so many stories, this was becoming quite difficult to do. So this tool, Utopia, has been really good at weeding out particularly the racist and really offensive stuff, which we don't really want to see under our stories. We'll still get commenters who can find ways around it if they want to be particularly antagonistic, but I think we welcome a bit of antagonism, but generally we don't want abuse or outright offense to be caused, so it's been useful for that. The AE team deployed it and worked with it, and it's learned as time's gone on, and the results have generally been pretty positive. And it allows moderators to focus on the high-value stuff, such as coming up with questions for commenters that might spur some debate, might get people talking and debating as we want them to. And it makes for a richer experience. And AI summaries. So everyone and his mother is trying AI summaries. And we've been working on them for quite some time, possibly too long. But we had a group of editors in the newsroom overseeing the production of these summaries, generating bullet points above stories. And we wanted to test, I think it was the Shipstead thesis, that these things make stories more engaging and make them more grabby and more useful for readers. Because we didn't really know whether if you saw a lot of summaries above the story, whether you would just actually read more stories, whether you would drift away, whether you'd be compelled to get to the bottom of the story. So they were producing them by hand, and we didn't really get enough volume to get really, really good data. Or the early data that we saw suggests that it was working as a sort of engagement tool and helping us with this aim of getting readers to stick around a bit longer. I think user sessions were extended, but I don't have precise numbers. So we're extending that test to 5% of all FT news stories, and we are taking the human out of the loop for this one. So we're going to offer it as an option. So you won't see the summary, but there'll be a button that says summarize, and alongside a button to translate the story into a different language. I think we're doing 5 or 6 different languages with Google Translate, which really kind of makes the article more useful if you're someone who doesn't speak English as a first language. We're going to be testing the accuracy of the translations. We already use Google Translate with our e-paper edition, and we've had no complaints about it, and I think plenty of people are using it, but we don't yet have hard data on the rest of our app or the rest of our live website. So we'll be offering translation alongside the summary. So the issue with taking the human out of the loop is one that we take seriously. It will mean that we have to update our AI code if we end up deploying this in a large scale after the period of test has finished. But we're quite confident because I think with the human oversight test that we ran, we didn't have any hallucinations. We were limiting the model to short news stories or 400 to 500 word news stories and getting an accurate summary each time in terms of the 3 bullet points. The changes that we had to make tended to be for style reasons or for repetition of headline, which we were able to fix with the prompt. So we haven't had hallucinations, touch wood. But we're going to be monitoring it closely. I don't know how many of you saw this story. Bloomberg, I don't know if there's anyone from Bloomberg here, but they've been deploying summaries, I think at a larger scale than we have to date. And there was something like 30, they found dozens of factual errors amongst thousands of summaries that they produced. Now, this raises an interesting question and a sort of an editorial product and tech difference, because I think if a handful of inaccuracies for thousands of stories is a sort of acceptable range if you're a P&T person. Unfortunately, if you're an editorial and you are accepting that there are going to be factual inaccuracies, then you are likely to be kneecapped by the editor of the FT. I mean, I speak as somebody who, every now and then I've made a mistake or other reporters make a mistake, and there is how can I put this delicately? Editors don't like factual inaccuracies in stories. So we have to be able to assure the editor of the FT that there will be no factual inaccuracies, at least, and if we get them in this test, then we'll have to rethink whether we deploy the summaries experiment at scale. But as I said, if we do roll it out more widely, we will update our guidance and it will be reflected in our AI ethics code. I was talking to Chris Moran about this as well just before his session. I don't know how many of you saw his earlier session that he did with colleagues from the New York Times and the Journal. And he made the point that how useful a summary is going to be anyway. And I'm sort of inclined to agree. We don't really know yet, but it's something that we can do with this technology, so we want to give it a try. We don't really know definitively whether they make stories more or less engaging. We don't know definitively whether readers will read more articles. And we don't know if readers even care. We haven't had any feedback from readers. We hopefully will get some. We should know with this, because we're going to be giving them the option to click on the story and summarize if they wish. We'll get a good sense of how many of them are using that. It may be that it's not statistically relevant and we end up dropping it, but we'll find out. Another project we launched, recommended newswires. We had a model, and we worked with a handful of reporters, and this has been rolled out to everybody in the newsroom now, where the model will look at the wires. This is Spark, which is our CMS, and reporters can get wire feeds in Spark. The model will look at the stories that they've printed and the topics that they've written about. It will look at the searches that they're making, and it will cluster wires together for them based on that. And it's gone down really well. I mean, reporters seem to be really engaging with it. And it saves them having to trawl larger groups of wire clusters and search for wires and they get more accurate returns for their searches. And the early results show that those who have access to all clusters are more likely to form a habit. The big sort of dark force coming over the hill is agentic AI, and I've talked to several colleagues about this at this conference. Will agentic AI further disintermediate publishers? I think for free access news publishers, agentic AI is a really, really bad thing. I think those with a paywall moat like the FT will be slightly less affected. We have the deal with OpenAI, which you may have read about. And we've given OpenAI access to our material, but when readers click through a summarized link, they'll get a paywall in front of them, and they'll have to shell out for that. But the idea that you could use your AI agent to pull together news from around the web, regardless of source, and give you a sort of an accurate picture early in the day is not great, we don't think, for publishers, and we have to really think about where we fit sort of in the value chain as they turn up. Our approach at the FT has sort of been consistent, that we need to keep publishing really distinct, really high-value journalism, really deep reporting, really big investigations, the sort of thing that can't be stolen by AI or disintermediated by an AI agent. And in that regard, AI can help, we hope, and we're betting. So we've created a new team called the Computational Journalism Team. It's run by my colleague Chris Cook, who some of you may know, who is ex-BBC. We hired a guy called Paul Caruana Galizia from Tortoise, and it's another editorial P&T tie-up. They've got assistants from engineers and data scientists in London and in our tech hub in Sofia, and it's working really well. They produce some really, really good stuff. They're using AI to crunch large data sets, to do fuzzy matching, to do the sorts of stories that hitherto we couldn't do at the FT, that would have taken too much time or been too labor intensive. It's been up and running for several months, but we really put it full into effect in January when we had this engineering resource, and the results have been really, really good. They've used different models. They're model agnostic. There's a range of models there that you see, and this is some of the stories that they've generated. My favorite was the one at the bottom, the Trump crypto project. They were able to see how much money people who started the Trump meme coin were making. We've separately looked at the UK Parliament Register of Members' Interest to see what MPs are spending their money on. We looked at a really good piece on Bangladesh and how the members of Sheikh Hasina's government were spending money where the property assets that they bought were located around the world. We've tracked the flow of federal contracts to see what's really going on in the early days of the Trump administration, particularly now that they've focused their crosshairs on consultants. And last week, I didn't have time to get this one fully in the presentation. A really good Tesla story. So the team were using AI to trawl through the regulator which monitors complaints about automobiles in the United States. And there have been thousands about faulty Teslas, thousands and thousands. So they were able to use the model to look for common themes, and a recurring theme in these complaints from Tesla, because again, they were all written they weren't written and formatted particularly cleanly, which is why AI really came into its own and really helped. But faulty braking was a recurring theme, and there were other issues too. And interestingly, I mean, as we were publishing the story, it turns out that the watchdog, which is responsible for monitoring road safety and monitoring complaints about automakers such as Tesla, is being cut to shreds by Elon Musk. So there's a nice bit of circularity. So these public databases, which come into the spotlight and which we're going to look at, I think it's not clear for how long we're going to have access to these databases as Musk and co. take their axe to US spending in an attempt to bring down costs. So just to finish, and if I've got a couple of minutes, if anyone has a question, I'm happy to take them. But just to finish, the underlying goal here is to, with our AI, is to use it as an aid, to do stories that we couldn't do before, to experiment with presentational stuff like summaries where we can. We still don't think there's a killer app yet in publishing. I don't get the sense there's one of the conferences I've been to, I haven't yet heard of anyone who's really nailed it. But we're optimistic about the future. And stories, I think, are at the heart of everything we do. And as long as we can keep doing those well, I think we're pretty confident about how things will pan out. That's it. Thanks for listening. If you have questions, I'll be happy to take them before time runs out. Oh, there's one right in the front. Hello. Oh, you might need a mic. There's a microphone coming.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much for the insights. My name is Stefan Voss. I work for the German news agency DPA. Yep. You talked about, let's say, I would rather call them bigger solutions, big ideas for whole FT. Is there also an idea in FT to maybe solve the issues, the tasks that like smaller editorial teams have, rather individual, particular ones? Anything on that direction also going on? I mean, it's really impressive what you have explained to us, but we often see, for example, in our organization as well, yeah, there is a need from bigger projects, but also a need from down below, where, as said, teams have particular transforming needs or other things, which is just making a lot of work for them and could be done also or automized on that.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, it's tricky with AI because often with AI it looks like a solution in search of a problem, right? And you know, there are genuine problems in every publisher, in every organization that I think that we all need to grapple with. I don't know whether AI is the natural solution for those problems. There's one. We have I talked about comments and comment moderation. We want to produce more questions for readers to get more debate going in the comments of our below the line. We have two people in that team who are responsible for moderating. We have another team in Manila, and coming up with good questions that we can scale across dozens of articles rather than 5 or 6 a day is labor intensive and time consuming. So one of the tests we're looking at now is whether we can produce questions based on the AI's reading of a story. You know, the moderator will have a quick scan of the question, and then we use that. We can get more debate going. We can get more questions, more discussion. But it's an interesting question that you raise, and in terms of the other problems, there's not always a natural AI solution. I think that's probably a good thing, actually. But I saw another hand earlier. Was there another one? Oh, just over here.
Hi, my name is Jarl. I work for a regional newspaper in Norway, and I was kind of a basic question. I was wondering if the language model that you've rolled out to your pro users, is it actually being used by them? Because
Ask FT.
Yeah.
It's only just gone live to the whole cohort, so I don't think we've got massive data. I think the early tests, there was a flurry of use, and there was a lot of excitement. Everyone kind of played around with it, and then it kind of dipped. And I think there's a behavioral shift needed, which may happen as more people start to use ChatGPT for search, where people aren't used to writing a full question into a search bar, rather than just doing keyword search is such a part of how we look for things online. But we'll see. It's working. It's 100 times better than it was when we launched it. We're not getting fettuccine souffle recipes anymore. Crab fettuccine recipes anymore. But it's an incomplete. It's the FT archive only, so it's synthesizing answers based on the FT archive only. And there's brilliant stuff on the FT archive, and it goes back a long time. But it's not a complete and comprehensive history of the world, right? So there are going to be gaps in it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, one over here. Sorry.
Hi, Vincent Smit. I'm the editor-in-chief of a Dutch local public news broadcaster.
Right.
Quick question regarding the data storage you mentioned from Tesla.
Yep.
How do you fact-check it? Because you said you have thousands of sources of information about the complaints, breaks, etc. How do you, from getting all that data, come to that story of fact-checking it and making it work?
There was, I think they did samples and were accurate enough with the samples that we looked at. So the model read, I think, 10,000 complaints, and however, I can't remember the slice that they took to check. Well, they did check manually, and it was completely accurate. So we were able to say with some confidence that there is a percentage of these complaints which relate to breaks, which relate to these other issues. But I don't know how long that database is going to still be online after Doge get their hands on it. So. Any more? Oh, that's it. We're done. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.